For more on the reaction to General McChrystal's resignation, as well as what happens next, we'll turn now to Matthew Alexander, who has spent over 18 years in the Air Force Reserves, as everything including a military interrogator, special ops helicopter pilot, criminal investigator, and counterintelligence agent. He was awarded a Bronze Star Medal for his service in Iraq. He's also the co-author of How to Break a Terrorist. Mr. Alexander, thanks again for your time tonight.
Thanks for the invitation, Keith.
Were you at all surprised by McChrystal's resignation over the comments that he made to Rolling Stone, particularly the nature of those comments about the president and other members of the administration?
I'm not surprised by his resignation, and I'm not entirely surprised by the comments. To some degree, you have to allow soldiers to do some grumbling, what we call wartime grumbling, about civilian controls over operations. That's to be expected, but it's not to be expected by senior leaders, certainly not general officers, and not by senior members of the staff, and certainly not in public. And I think the decision for General McChrystal both to resign and for President Obama to replace him was the right one.
With this now having a finality to it, a conclusion, the general was given tremendous latitude running the most covert of black ops programs, tracking down, often killing militants. The al-Qaeda and in Iraq leader Abu Musab al-Zarqawi was foremost on that list. He skated right through the Pat Tillman cover-up as well. The latitude in both of those things, might that have led him to believe he could make that kind of, in Army, in military grumbling about the president with a reporter present, and there would not be any reporting of it?
There might have been some of that. There might have been some complacency in terms of what he felt he could say as the commander of forces in Afghanistan and his prior successes. I think General McChrystal, to be fair, he deserves some credit for having conducted the operations, that I took part in to find and kill Abu Musab al-Zarqawi, in other operations which saved thousands of lives. At the same time, he skated through his Senate confirmation after admitting that mistakes were made when asked about detainee abuse and even homicides that happened under JSOC while he was commander. So I think maybe there was some complacency in making these comments, but in the end, the right actions were taken.
You mentioned the confirmation hearing. Looking ahead to the Petraeus one, Senators McCain and Graham said today that those hearings would be the fastest ever on record. Shouldn't there be some level of scrutiny before we go ahead, even if it's General Petraeus with the reputation he had from Iraq? I mean, say what they said, why even hold the hearings?
Well, I think the part of this that we have to remember is that where McChrystal was a practitioner of COIN, or counterinsurgency strategy, Petraeus is an author, along with other men like Colonel John Nagel and Andrew Exum and David Kilcullen. These are the men who have authored the modern COIN strategy. And so we've already had the discussion on the strategy in Afghanistan, and we've already decided we're going with this COIN strategy. Mm-hmm. So in that respect, I don't think so. But also we have to remember that General Petraeus doesn't have the skeletons in his closet that General McChrystal did and that he was asked about during Senate confirmation hearing. Deadliest month
in Afghanistan. It's on track to be the deadliest year in Afghanistan for U.S. troops. Marja is, in McChrystal's own words, a bleeding ulcer. They've delayed the planned operation in Kandahar, and the Karzai government is still, as it seemingly always is, threatening to cut a deal with the Taliban. That none of those are good and encouraging signs. What happens if General Petraeus cannot turn that mess around, and what particularly could a man even of Petraeus's previous stature hope to accomplish on some sort of personal level?
Well, I mean, Afghanistan is going to be a challenge no matter who's in charge. Mm-hmm. But I think what Petraeus brings to this fight, and I think optimistically that this is a good change, is two pillars of COIN strategy have to be turned around. The first is corruption in the government, which is absolutely necessary to eradicate if you're going to build faith in the people to support the COIN strategy. And the second is the civilian side of support to military operations. Whether it's social services or building schools or providing jobs, you can't conduct effective COIN without that type of support. And I think General Petraeus is one of the people who's been the biggest advocates of that type of activities, support military operations.
But is it true? I've heard this before, and I've never heard this verified by anybody who knew the subject. Is it true that the cost of putting the Afghans in charge of their own security, of their own military, of having somebody replacing our troops there, is several times the gross national product per year in Afghanistan, that it's almost an incomprehensible? It would be as if something here costs $700 trillion a year?
Well, I've heard the same rumors that it would be an incredible cost. Maybe they can use some of the money from this $1 trillion worth of minerals to support that. But the bottom line is, eventually, the Afghans do have to step up and take over responsibility for their own security. But they're not going to do that if they don't have faith in a government. And so I think what General Petraeus has to do when he steps into Afghanistan is he's got to restore the Afghan people's faith in their government and bring in the social services that they need to support the coin strategy.
The former U.S. military interrogator using the pseudonym Matthew Alexander. As always, we thank you for your time, sir.
You're welcome.